So how many of you know the saying, be careful what you pray for, because you just might get it? Well, that's the way the disciples were feeling in today's gospel lesson. They'd been following Jesus for probably about 2 years. And a lot had changed in that time. When they first joined him, the crowds were small and well-behaved and easy to manage. And the disciples could kind of stand off into one corner and they could watch Jesus as he interacted with everyone. Oh, it was something to behold. He was so gentle and so kind. He spent all the time necessary with each person, and he listened and he gave them what they needed. Sometimes it was a word of encouragement, and other times he had to perform a miracle to bless them. Oh, the disciples, they never stopped being amazed at the things that he could do. Other people were equally amazed. That's probably why the crowds continued to grow. To be a part of that ministry, just to be able to do part of what Jesus could do, it was their dream. And they watched and they kept wondering how he could possibly do everything he did. And the crowds continued to grow and grow and grow. And they began to wonder how he could possibly continue. And unknown to them, Jesus was wondering the same thing. And one day he finally went to them. And he said, guess what? I need your help. And they said, sure, Lord, what do you need? And he said, y'all are going to go out 2 by 2. You're going to preach the good news and you're going to heal the sick. And they went, whoa, not me. I don't know how to do that. And Jesus said, wait a minute. What do you mean you don't know how to do that? You've been with me for how long? And so he blessed them and he sent them out. Guess what? They did it. By the time they arrived back with Jesus, they were so excited about everything they had accomplished. They had preached the good news. They had healed people. People had come to faith. They wanted to know more about Jesus. They didn't even notice the fact that Jesus seemed to be a little off guard. Because you see, while they had been out preaching the news and healing, he had gotten word that his cousin, John, had been beheaded. Jesus, he was always the compassionate one. And so in place of stopping them and saying, let me tell you what happened to me, he said, I tell you what, guys, you're tired. And there's so many people needing so many things. Let's just go away for a while. I mean, that way we can rest and we can eat. We can just be together. That's what he wanted. But despite his good intentions, by the time their boat landed, an extremely large group of people had gathered. I mean, large group. I mean, really large. We call it 5,000, but if you notice, the scriptures say that was 5,000 men, which meant there were a whole lot of women and children who just didn't count. But I guarantee you they were there. And I guarantee you the Lord didn't ignore them. He listened. He cared for them. He fed them. Mark tells us he had compassion for them. And so he began to teach them. And the disciples, well, they thought it was pretty cool at first, but then evening started coming, and they looked at this huge crowd, and they realized that they were all going to need some food pretty soon. So they went to Jesus, and they said, look, it's getting late. Let's just send them out so they can get something to eat. And Jesus said, you feed them. Right. 12 men. They're going to feed over 5,000 people? And so Jesus says, how much food do you have? Guess what? They didn't know. You see, they'd already announced that it was impossible, but they hadn't even bothered to see how much food was out there. Amazing, isn't it? They'd already made up their minds. So Jesus, he says, why don't you go find out? Pretty good first step, right? And so they come, and they go out among the crowd, and they come back feeling really justified because all they found were 5 loaves and 2 fish. And Jesus looks at them again and says, terrific, now go feed them. How? Who's going to get the loaves and who's going to get the fish? So Jesus takes them and says, go have everybody sit down. And he blesses the bread and he breaks it. And he gives them back 5 loaves and 2 fish. And he says, now feed them. Mark tells us they were fed and there were 12 baskets left over. But that's not the end of the story. Some of you may remember, because the rest of the story is something that I really love. They finish their ministry, they feed the 5,000, and then they get in the boat and they begin to cross the lake, and guess what? They get hungry. And they look around, and guess what they forgot? The bread. They have 1 loaf of bread in the boat. Now, they just had 12 baskets left over. You guys aren't seeing the humor in this? I mean, I find it really funny. And so they start arguing with each other. Who forgot the bread? Why didn't you bring it? It was your job to load the boat. You know how the argument goes, right? And Jesus, well, he finally has it with them. I mean, in this instance, he gets really angry with them. They're arguing over the situation in place of just asking for help. And so he looks at him and he says, you know what the problem is with you guys? It isn't that you don't have any bread, it's that you don't have any faith. Try changing your attitude and see what happens. Christians, we live in tough times. It seems like we're in the middle of the boat and we don't have enough resources. We worry. The economy is soft. The job market is limited. Our institutions are crumbling. Our society is out of control. And in times like these, our first instinct is to pull in, to declare what is mine, and I don't have to share it. Everyone else is just on their own. I mean, we can't take care of the world, right? We can't feed everyone, right? Wrong. There is plenty of bread in the world for everyone. And as people of faith, it is our responsibility to make certain it is distributed in such a way that everyone has exactly what they need. According to William Philippe, God has put us together here in this extended family to become a demonstration of what God intends for all humanity. We are here to discover the new humanity, the new creation, to show a new beginning for human life in the world where sin is forgiven, reconciliation is accomplished, where the dividing walls of hostility are torn down. We are expected to live as disciples, as followers of this new way of life, to participate in God's activity in the world by healing and reconciling and binding up wounds. We're to minister to the needs of the poor, the sick, the lonely, and the powerless, engaging in the struggle to free people from sin, fear, oppression, hunger, and injustice, giving of ourselves and our money to the service of others. That's a pretty impressive statement, isn't it? It makes a lot of demands on us. And so how are we supposed to achieve these impossible goals with our limited resources, numbers, and time? Well, Christians, I want to see a show of hands. How many of you believe that Jesus really fed the 5,000 men plus women and children? How many of you really believe that Jesus fed 12 very hungry men with just one loaf of bread? Do you believe that God is present in the world today? Do you feel like you're getting pushed into a corner here? Do you believe that God has the same power to change lives and work miracles? Do you believe that God expects us to do something? God expects us to give of our prayers, our presence, our gifts, our service, and our witness. And Christians, when we combine those things that we have been given, our time, our money, and our faith, when we place them on the altar and ask for God's blessings, miracles happen. Hearts open, lives change. Prayers are said, the bread is broken, and people are fed. Christians, where's our faith? So what is one loaf in the midst of so many? What is one person standing up for justice? What is it when we sacrifice? What is it? It's just enough to save the world. When we join Him around the table.